she's not going to get it.
Last time we were there, she was eating a bunch of sticks.
How many beers did you drink last time?
11.
Bud Lights though, right?
Bush Light.
Yo, what is up, Bitcoiners? I can tell that we are live. Everyone, this is the first Bitcoin Magazine happy hour exclusively with Bitcoin Magazine employees. We got quite a fantastic and toxic bunch, several new folks to the team. But we have a great lineup of topics and a great lineup of Bitcoiners. Let's get it started with some introductions. I'm CK. My job here is to make sure the conversation flows and the drinks flow as well. I'm drinking an IPA. I'll send it over to my man, Joe, my co-host. Welcome to the show.
Yo, what up, fam? Ready to have some fun. I think we got a swagger lineup tonight. We got some good topics. We got some smart folks on the call. I think that CK, this call, the average age of attendees has gone down quite a bit with this call. So I think that Zoomers United strong on this call. So very, very pumped about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, in terms of the Zoomers, these are some of the strongest members of the team. So I love seeing these heavy hitters jumping in immediately, making a big impact. Let's start off with some intros. I'm going to send it over to the OG Zoomer, Mr. Nick Can't Mine. Welcome.
Yo, what's up, everyone? Nick here. Zoomer, really happy to see more Zoomers join the squad, and yeah, just chilling.
All right, cool. Nick came onto the team last year in 2020, took up social media for the team, and has accrued more than 200,000 followers under his watch. So very good job putting the Zoomers to a good reputation there, Nick.
Thank you.
But he still can't mine, so
They'll forever haunt him. All
Brandon's
right, let's
gonna
jump
beat
over
on that joke forever.
Hey, I mean, I think it's self-inflicted. Let's jump over to our first content queen joining the team, Leigh Quinn. Welcome to the show.
Woo! Hi, everybody. I'm Leigh Quinn. There is no stupid Bitcoin question that I've not asked at least 5 times and messed up just as many times. So I'm here to focus on education and trying to make Bitcoin more accessible.
Let's go. Yeah, I think I've been trying to get you on this live stream for like 6 months now. So it's pretty cool that the first time you're jumping on, you're actually part of the Bitcoin Magazine team. So welcome to the team. Welcome to the stream. I want to send this one over to my man, Casey. Casey has been on the team for about a month now. And again, making a huge impact. Really love working with this guy. Welcome to Bitcoin Magazine Happy Hour. Is this your second time on the show?
Yeah, this is my second time. Super stoked to be back. I always love being on this show. So thanks for having me. And I've loved working at the magazine. It's been great. So yeah, a lot of the articles you guys see, I have a hand in some way. So it's just great to be able to have such an impact on the best publication in the space. And we're drinking Coors Light tonight. So
Coors Latte. Nick
Tap the
Carter would be
Rockies,
proud.
yeah, it's
All
cold.
right. All right, I'm gonna send it over to Will. Will, nice laser flip eyes or laser flip cap you got going on there. We just did a podcast with Raphael from Glassnode. That one's coming out in a couple weeks. How you doing, man? Welcome to Bitcoin Magazine Happy Hour.
What's up, CK? I'm super excited to be here. Hopefully this is the first of many to come. I just put in my 2 weeks at Target, by the way, so I'm ready to go full-time Bitcoin.
Let's go.
Let's go.
Oh, can you believe this dude's been at Target the whole time? Like, WTF.
Dude, man, stock some shelves, bro.
All right, stock shelves, stack sats.
Stocking shelves and stacking sats, right?
You gotta love it. All right, I'm gonna send it over to Dylan. Dylan, today you just got retweeted by Michael Saylor. It's not the first time that has happened, but I mean, people can't believe, the smart shit that comes out of your account. And, I've met you personally now, and dude, you definitely bat above your weight class.
Appreciate the kind words, man. Yeah, it's been a crazy couple weeks on Twitter, and since I joined the Bitcoin Magazine team, it's been awesome. Definitely a dream to shit post and write about Bitcoin and hang out with Bitcoiners all day or online. So happy to be on the team and happy for this to be on this happy hour.
Let's go. All right. Who's left? We got Nick and we got Bran. Let's go Nick Ward first. Nick, welcome to the team.
Sure. Thank you. New addition to the team. I'm going to be working on monetization, the Bitcoin Magazine store, maybe some design work, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Really excited to be here. Feeling pretty old amongst all the Zoomers here. I'm not going to lie, but it's exciting to see. That's it, I guess.
All right. Well, in case people weren't paying attention, Bitcoin price is at 58K. So
I'm trying to raid the boss's fridge because I'm hanging out here right now, and looks like he doesn't have any beer. So shame on him, really. But anyway, I am doing conference stuff at the company, Bitcoin 2021. If you ain't coming yet, you better get your ticket because we're selling them really quick, and we're probably going to sell out soon. Other than that, I used to be the co-host here, and when I heard CK introduce Joe as the co-host, I died a little inside, but that is growth. That is the circle of life. So excited to be a panelist here, and hopefully I won't ramble as much as normal, but off to a bad start. So pass it back to you, CK.
yeah, man. Well, hey, you're only a co-host because you gave up. So you just couldn't handle the workload, and you came to me with your tail between your legs. So, Joe had to step in, and he's been holding it down pretty well so far. But happy to have you back on the show, and hope to have you back in the co-hosting position here on Bitcoin Magazine Happy Hour. Before we get into it, I got to show the conference. I mean, all of us are working our asses off for the conference in either a large or a very large way. So there's not really a small way to be involved in this conference, but it's going to be huge. The biggest Bitcoin event ever. I saw on Twitter some VC complaining about, like, do I have to go to Miami? Like, do I have to do this? And he's over in Asia. And I think it's like 28 days of quarantine time if he comes to Miami. And I guess he's considering it. We'll see if he actually shows. But, I don't know about if 28 days is worth it, but almost. I mean, if it was 30 days, I'd be like, nah. If it was 21 days, I'd be like, 100% you got to go to this conference. There's going to be Michael Saylor. There's going to be Jack Dorsey. I know that's controversial in some crazy way, but he's going to be there. I mean, we're going to have freaking Chamath. We're going to have, I know that Surfer Jim is going to be there. I don't know if he's going to be speaking quite yet, but he's going to be there. And yeah, I mean, look, the speakers at this event are going to be absolutely mind-numbing. Just go to the conference website, b.tc/conference. Check it out. Go check out all the companies there that are on that list. If you want to work in this space, all of us are working in this space, but if you want to work in this space, I can't think of a better investment than Bitcoin 21 ticket. So check out all the sponsors, see which companies are going to be there, show yourself, be at the event, meet all the Bitcoiners at the conference. And yeah, use promo code Satoshi. I think it's on the screen somewhere. Save yourself 10% off. Pay with Bitcoin. Save yourself another $50 on your ticket. So we want your sats so bad, we're willing to discount those tickets for you. And yeah, be in Miami. We're going to sell out, so don't wait. All right, guys. That was a huge show. I'm excited to see all of you guys in Miami. We're all separated right now, decentralized. But we have quite the list of topics here. Joe put them together. I think the first one here is Bitcoin versus the state. We published a couple of pretty hard-hitting articles here. One of them from Julian Assange's family, kind of asking Bitcoiners to stand up for Julian Assange. Other ones talking about Bitcoin as this like revolutionary tool of truth in this world of deceit. And like we're living in kind of like this paradigm where we're in this Bitcoin world. We have a foot in this Bitcoin world, but we're also looking around and we're seeing like the fiat world, the world that everyone else is living in. And I'm just kind of curious, like, what is it like to be in between it, right? And like, what are you seeing on both sides? What's your take on Bitcoin versus the state and, this kind of like this grinding between both these forces? I'm going to put someone on the spot. I think I'm going to put Joe on the spot because I know he's especially passionate about this. And I know he's going to Guns and Bitcoin tomorrow, which is quite the anarchist event.
Yeah, you know what? I picked the title. I picked this whole lineup and I put this one top of the hour, Bitcoin versus the state. And first thing I want to say is number one, the state hates you. So just keep that in mind at all times. But these two articles dropped this week. And I think that, these are two really high quality articles. The first one by Gabriel Shipton, Assange's brother. And just, I have some friends who are newer to Bitcoin and they didn't know the backstory. They didn't know that Assange, had direct communication with Satoshi, and Satoshi asked WikiLeaks to pump the brakes, so that the protocol could harden a bit. So I think that's pretty damn cool for newcomers to learn a bit of that backstory. And then Nozomi knocked it out of the park with Bitcoin, revolutionary money in a time of universal deceit. It just goes back to Bitcoin as being this truth machine that can't be stopped. And it is designed to just completely destroy the state and empower the individual. So I thought that, first of all, this revolution can't be stopped. It's powered by cryptography, a completely decentralized network, and it's inevitable. And I think that the thing that I always come back to is that it's literally Bitcoin or communism, and there's no in between. It's going to be one of the two paradigms. And I think everyone on this call and everyone listening, we're all in on the individual and Bitcoin. And so reading these two articles coming out, it just made me so fucking jacked. And I think the last thing that I just want to come back to is that, every cycle we get newcomers coming in, and the fact that I had people reach out to me and say, oh, I didn't know this backstory about WikiLeaks. It just goes to show you that like the memes that maybe are ingrained in like our DNA at this point, we have to continuously recycle them and we can't let the history be forgotten. So if you're out there listening, or even some of the young guns on the show, if there's something that you're saying, oh, well, this I did, the drum's already been beaten. Like, well, this just goes to show you that we need to continue beating that drum, resurface those memes, tell the story again, because there's new eyeballs and new people that need to hear the story that aren't going to dig into the archives from 2017. So I'll shut up. I'll drink some Busch Light, but overall, fuck the state. I'm for the individual. Let's go Bitcoin.
Speaking of resurfacing old stories, like I think that's a message that the entire Bitcoin Magazine team needs to hear, because we need to do more of that. I know Leigh is going to do a huge job of just kind of like resurfacing evergreen stuff, but educating as well. Casey this week surfaced that it was Satoshi's birthday and resurfaced some historical context about Satoshi's birthday. And our man, speaker at Bitcoin 2021, Jack Dorsey, smashed the retweet button. So that's pretty cool for a young dude, Casey. Why don't you talk about that experience and then talk about Bitcoin versus the state?
Yeah. First of all, just to touch on the Jack Dorsey thing, it was crazy just because we published late in the day, and it was just a recap of things that we had done on Satoshi in the past, and yet signal above the noise. Jack Dorsey knows exactly what's up, and he retweets the Bitcoin Magazine piece, of course. So beyond that, Bitcoin is going to show the state that the individuals have the power, and as long as we maintain our decentralized nature, I think that there's nothing that can, bring us down in our dissipation of the state and our defense against the centralized citadel that's like digital, and we're all just, harboring our individual wealth and prosperity in, decentralized citadel.
Let's go. Well, I love that decentralized citadel. I'm just starting with people running their own hardware. I'm just hoping that people just run their own hardware and have a personal server. But the full citadel stack is going to be epic. I believe that for sure. I want to send it over to Leigh. So Leigh, I mean, you're here to kind of try to translate Bitcoin to a wider audience. I know that's something you're passionate about. Can you kind of talk about Bitcoin versus state, like maybe just how you think about that thing, because maybe that's not something that you focus on in your message necessarily.
Yeah, I think I definitely have a different opinion than some people who are into Bitcoin about Bitcoin versus state, and that's okay, and that's good. I don't necessarily think that the state will disappear or that centralized sources of power will disappear anytime soon, at least. But I do think that I'll be able to weather them much better if I own Bitcoin and I understand how to operate my own Bitcoin. And it's just this really helpful tool in terms of learning how to, like you're saying, operate your own server. Oh my God. Not quite there yet. Starting, trying, very confused. But like I got a Raspberry Pi and I built that. And like, these are things that like, it had never even occurred to me before that like, could be relevant to me, I guess, and could be possible. And I think that Bitcoin is a tool that allows us to explore what is possible for us to do ourselves that maybe had seemed even both impractical and impossible. Like if you had asked me maybe a year ago if I would have been able to manage my own wealth outside of a bank, I would have said absolutely not. I do not manage all of my own wealth outside of a bank, but the fact is I have not lost a very tiny amount, and that is like a step in the right direction of not always needing to trust external parties, but sometimes being able to designate for yourself responsibilities and work your way into them. I think in terms of taking more responsibility for myself in a state that doesn't care about me at all, that can be a really helpful tool.
I like that perspective. I mean, like ultimately Bitcoin is about the individual and enabling and empowering individuals. So like, that's personally why I'm hyped about it. I'm curious who wants to jump in, who's hyped about this topic.
I'll jump in. So who was that trying to jump in front of me? Was that Nick?
No, Brandon, yeah. Nick. We're going seniority on this one.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Guy up.
Back off. It's my turn. So, the thing that I wanted to surface too is like, I don't know if you guys were following what's his name? Like Josh Wolf and Pomp have been like going back and forth about Bitcoin for a while. And he's trying to like make this argument now based on like the whole Peter Thiel China thing that like Bitcoin is somehow like unpatriotic, quote unquote. And like I think that's another aspect that probably we don't do a good enough job really enunciating some of the values that scream patriotism with Bitcoin. I mean, most of the founding ideals of America are like very, very in tune with what Bitcoin is for. Like we're not here to worship power and to try and create a governing system that's greater than its people. Like the whole point is to bring the power to the people. And so that's what Bitcoin does. I mean, it decentralizes. And I think that it's like a really big mistake to see, Bitcoin being a check on the government's power as unpatriotic. That's the definition of patriotism. So I just wanted to throw in those two stats and, basically say that while, Bitcoin may, what's the thing he searched? He searched like USD hegemony. Bitcoin may undermine the USD hegemony, but that is ultimately a good thing for Americans, and I think that that's the take-home message for me.
Brand, do you think that the state the fact that it has the dollar, it kind of empowers the corruption and the evilness per se. I mean, do you think that under a Bitcoin standard, if you will, they will go back to providing goods and services that the people demand? I mean, like what does the game theory play out?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's like an optimistic take. If you look at kind of what the incentives are right now, the U.S. government is selling dollars to the world that aren't backed in anything, right? And so like they need to be very defensive and make sure that like they kind of have a tight grip on people's opinion of the U.S. dollar and therefore the U.S. government. So it's very much from a position of power and violence, and if you oppose us, we will kind of support your opposition and get rid of you. And so that comes from the fact that we had to partner with the Saudis, get the petrodollar going, protect their monarchy, and then challenge anyone who dares try to supplant their power. And like all of that kind of stuff is just like a corrupted backwards way of looking at geopolitics, and that can kind of seep into how we look at domestic politics. And I think if you look at some of the government institutions that sprung out of that attempt at creating a strong fiat US dollar, you can kind of start to see the domestic kind of allegorical similar structures evolving. And I mean, look, you can't have a surveillance on your citizens if the citizens don't want to pay for it, and you're Bitcoin back. So I'm rambling, but basically I see it as like really an aligned incentive between the government and the people. I'm not one of those who believe that government won't exist in any form with Bitcoin, but I am a believer that like the government that will exist will be one that has to always be 100% aligned with the people. Otherwise, it loses its validity. So that doesn't happen right now with the US dollar because we can print money and pay ourselves with it. But it will if, that sort of hegemony is challenged by Bitcoin.
Yeah.
All right. Smash the like button. I agree. It is all about making governments better, making governments serve citizens better. All right, Nick, I apologize for interrupting you. Go.
No, it's all good. Yeah, like Bitcoin is one of the most patriotic things I've ever seen in my life. I think if the founding fathers had it at that time, they would have definitely implemented some sort of Bitcoin standard. And it's funny how that dude was saying, oh, Bitcoin's unpatriotic, it's anti-American, when the US dollar is like the most anti-American thing I can think of. It's literally a monopoly on money from the state. It's messed up in every way. And I side with Joe on a lot of this. For this stuff, I think the state hates you. I think they do things to slowly take away your rights and freedoms and try to enslave you in any way. I always think of what like Michael Saylor says with like it's like the road to serfdom, and I just look at everything the state does as like, okay, that's a road to serfdom, that's a road to serfdom, that is too, and that's all I can think about now. Is like whenever Joe says the state hates you, it's like that's all I can think of, and all I want the state to do is just do what it was supposed to do and protect life, liberty, and property. And that's it. Like, I don't want them, intervening with the economy or doing anything else. And I think that we have to use Bitcoin to take their power away, take away their monopoly on money. So now they can't, go fund terrorism. They can't, go to war for literally nothing. Now they can't fund a bunch of stuff and incorrectly allocate capital. Now they actually have to, on a Bitcoin standard, be very wary with what they spend their money on and, treat their citizens in their best interest.
I hope you guys don't mind me jumping in. I'm curious. I have a question. Can anyone think of any example in history in which the state willingly gave up power as people moved their wealth into other assets? Because I can't. I can certainly think of cases in history in which there were multiple economies going on at the same time, right? And that there were other assets that were increasingly popular, widespread, well used. I can't think of any in which the state might have been weakened. But I can't think of one in which a state voluntarily was like, oh, cool, everyone is, trading in silks or everyone is trading in grain. So we're just going to like be fine with that and not try and take taxes in that form or try and adjust policy in order to capture some of that value. Right?
Agreed, but that's the beautiful thing is that you don't have to ask for permission, right? Like you can run your Raspberry Pi, or phone or laptop or whatever, and now we can voluntarily opt out, and they can yell and scream and kick and they will tax, and they'll they maybe, like with Assange or with Ross, they might try to make examples of people, big influential people, maybe, but at the end of the day, the state's just a bunch of individuals with their own incentives. And while they may say one thing about Bitcoin, probably a lot of these guys are accumulating, Um, so I agreed. I mean, there's going to be a power struggle, but the beautiful thing is that we don't have to ask for permission anymore.
I also, what about whenever like Bitcoiners are infiltrate the state, the government itself, Leigh? What about that?
Yeah. So I play a game with myself where I try and guess who are the most powerful Bitcoiners in the world. Does anyone think for 1 second that the royalty in Saudi Arabia, for example, or even the leadership in China, which has communism, you mentioned that earlier, doesn't own Bitcoin? I don't think they don't own Bitcoin. I think for sure they probably own Bitcoin. There's a lot of factors at play that if they weren't owning Bitcoin, it wouldn't make sense to me. So yeah,
No,
there is a factor of like them not making terrible policies against Bitcoiners just because they are some.
So what happens over time as we already have sitting senators, we have sitting House members, that number is going to grow. I don't see it going down. I see Bitcoin next election, after we go like fucking through the roof this bull cycle, it's going to be a ticket issue, and like you see what Mayor Suarez is doing, and like we're going to see the good shit that's happening in Wyoming, and now Texas is putting the friendly legislation in place. When those economies start seeing this like boom from Bitcoin, other places, you're going to see jurisdictional arbitrage, and constituents are going to be like, I want some of that. So I think the number of Bitcoiners is going to go up. So the meme will infiltrate the state itself. And
I want to jump in here. I want to hear from two people. I want to hear from Nick Ward. I want to hear from Will. Let's start with Nick. What's your take on this conversation?
Well, I mean, I agree with Leigh, and I don't think the state is actually going anywhere. I think the end goal is to shrink it as much as humanly possible. What we're aiming for here is flipping the power structure and dispersing all of that power back to the plebs, right, the individuals. So really just viewing it as a tool for expanding and protecting the rights of individuals. Like how could that be misconstrued as being something that's un-American? I don't understand. It kind of seems like a new version of an encoded constitution that's completely opt-in, right? And that's what's beautiful about it, is that it's kind of like something that you cannot coerce on anybody, but at the same time, no one can coerce you out of it. So it kind of has that asymmetry there, to where it protects the individual way more than it protects anyone trying to initiate some kind of grab for power.
Oh, jump in here.
Yeah, I really don't have too much to add to anything that anybody said. I just think it's very interesting that, especially in other countries, there's definitely people in power that are accumulating Bitcoin. And there's probably a fair amount of those people that are speaking out against it publicly. So I think you have to not follow people's words and follow their actions. And the thing about Bitcoin is that you don't know what their actions are in that regard. So people need to just think for themselves and not listen to what these people are saying.
I like that take. It's a real take. I think your perspective maybe a little bit less like political and a little bit more market based than most of the people on this panel. Can you kind of give your just take on Bitcoin from purely a financial stance, or maybe I'm mischaracterizing how you even think about Bitcoin?
Yeah, I just, I think it all at the end of the day kind of goes back to what Satoshi said about, if enough people think that it might catch on, they take a small position, right? And then it becomes like this self-fulfilling thing. And I think that's occurring around the world more than people really realize. I think there's a lot of people that have a lot of money, and they're sitting there saying, all right, well, I'm going to take 1% of my money and I'm going to put it into this thing just to hedge against the possibility of its success. And so I think over the next year or two, as we know what Bitcoin's price is getting ready to do, I think there's going to be a lot of people that step in and say, hold on, there's some validity to this thing, and I need to take a small position at least to hedge against success. And then that becomes, in my opinion, like a self-fulfilling thing on a global scale.
All right. Well, rounding that out into a news item is like this Ukraine news about the officials or the oligarchs in Ukraine and their public Bitcoin positions. Anyone have any thoughts on that?
I just thought that was interesting because our good friend Peter said that he's like from Ukraine or something like that, or he's visited a lot and he knows a lot about it. So he said that if that's true, whoever has that amount of Bitcoin has like a majority stake of power in that country, essentially. That's how much money that is. And I thought that was a very interesting factoid, that whoever has the most Bitcoin in Ukraine probably is the most powerful person in Ukraine.
Can someone recap what the headline is here? I missed it.
Got it, CK.
Well, so Dylan, what were you gonna say? And I'll grab the specific headline for Bran.
Yeah, I just think it's beautiful that with Bitcoin that like there's been power struggles for millennia, and we've had all sorts of different money, and we've had all sorts of different, I guess, like phases in human civilization, like the agricultural age, and then the feudal societies, and now the industrial age, and now we're moving into the information age. Before, with gold, there was wars waged over gold for centuries, and millions of people killed. And with fractional reserve banking, there's been a little bit less deaths, although there still is a military industrial complex, but there's been a small group of people siphoning off wealth from the entire populace via fiat money, seigniorage, the monetary system. And so now theft with Bitcoin is really neither possible nor economical anymore. And that's, I think, long term, yes, there are going to be oligarchs, and they're going to be, some families are going to have dynastic wealth, but it really, the return on violence, which is a key thing in the sovereign individual, is nothing anymore, or very close to nothing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the key here, and that I have the Sovereign Individual behind me. I have multiple copies. I mean, it's an important book. I think everyone should read it. This is all about the logic of violence, right? It's about like, does it pay for me to pay someone to do this to coerce money out of you? And if that logic changes, the way that people behave changes. And the idea is that Bitcoin is going to change the logic of violence in a way that makes it no longer profitable to be violent. That's the utopian, perspective. I mean, talking about Bitcoin versus the state, like that's the end game, right? Like, who has thoughts about that?
I'm not sure if I would agree necessarily with the utopian vision, but I would say that, so you were pointing out, the guy who owns the most Bitcoin in Ukraine is probably one of the most powerful men in the Ukraine, right? And he's probably already has some kind of political power. But as you guys were saying, otherwise, he can't infringe on the power of individual Ukrainians to create mini economies within themselves and use Bitcoin directly. And I think that it does create really fun incentives in terms of community building. And liquidity and the value that Bitcoin can have to people is entirely determined by their network or their access to institutions, right? Like my ability to pay my rent with Bitcoin is either reliant on a bank or reliant on my ability to talk to my landlord and convince him to transact with me directly. And so it creates this incentive for direct cooperation as opposed to competition in a way, but also as part of a community. Like if we're not relying on each other, then we're relying on this big institution that has this power over us. So I think that's really cool. I think that incentive to work directly with people in your community that you actually need for your own survival and that you support their survival, I think that's a really positive incentive.
Someone take it. I feel like the listeners are hearing way too much of me.
Yo, I want to know
come on.
How many signatures are in that Ukrainian multi-sig wallet? And that sounds like a fucking crazy honeypot. But also, okay, back to like the return on violence, with each change in humanity, every like big shift forward, there's a big increase in technology. And with that technology increase is an increase in defensive technology, and Bitcoin is that defensive technology. I was listening to John Vallis, he was doing the Bitcoin book club, and they were reviewing Bastiat's The Law, and they were talking about something simple as like the invention of the wall. Like the invention of the wall prevented plunderers. It made it a lot more deadly for them. A big price increase to sack a city. Now they had to climb over a wall, and the threat of violence. And now, fast forward, now we've got Bitcoin. The threat of violence is just way uneconomical to wage violence against all of us. So I forgot where I'm going with this, but fuck central banks.
I do want to jump in and say I thought it was really interesting what Leigh said about Bitcoin incentivizing like the community cooperation. I really agree. I think the concept itself, like the nodes and the way that the network operates, is just in itself like inherently it drives and it incentivizes us to move away from sort of centralized solution to things. So I thought that was a very interesting observation, I guess.
Casey, I'm gonna call on you to either turn off your video or fix your internet. All right, who wants to take this, guys? We're getting fiery, and we're still only on the first topic. I think we're already 40 minutes in. I mean, Joe, should we move on? Like, how are you guys
let's
feeling?
talk, man. I think that look, I think we got a good pulse on toxicity in here, and I don't think anyone on this call is going to bend the knee to the state, and that's the Bitcoiner ethos. So hold your keys. Be sovereign.
Anyone want to close out this topic with a bang? No. Okay. Let's talk about Coinbase, guys. Coinbase, love them or hate them, they're very important in the Bitcoin ecosystem right now. They've been a huge part of onboarding some of these big companies, Tesla, Microstrategy, I'm sure many more. Obviously they have competitors, but them going public is a big moment in the space. I'm not going to give too much of my opinions because I have them, and I'm sure they'll leak out throughout this conversation. But I want to get your guys' take on Coinbase. Haven't heard from Brandon in a minute. Brand, jump in here.
Yeah, so a couple thoughts that I have around it. One of the ones that I'm super interested in is to see what coins pump alongside Coinbase and whether anything pumps harder than Bitcoin. Because what I see this as is actually a really big liquidity event for a lot of the OG employees there. And so if they're able to get a bunch of liquidity, where do they put it? Are you going to see a big flow into Bitcoin? Are you going to see a big flow into some of these other coins? And if you see kind of that, then how does that reflect on Coinbase's priority set today? Does it at all? Does it mirror it very, very strongly? I'm not sure. So I'm interested to see. I'm not as some people are like talking about how it'll create another thing for people to buy besides Bitcoin, and that's bad for Bitcoin or anything like that. Like, I don't think that that's accurate. I think that it's cool that we've got a publicly traded exchange in the U.S. that's going to be a very valuable company. I think that does a lot in terms of Bitcoin's lobbying power and that side of things. So I think it's a really good thing for the space. And whether you think that Coinbase touches too many shit coins, it's a valid criticism, but you got to respect the fact that they've built something pretty incredible there. And with or without their measly Bitcoin holdings on their balance sheet, they've definitely helped legitimize this space and move it forward. So that's my take, which I know is going to be a different take than some of the people in this room.
All right, I want to hear from Will and Dylan because both of you guys have been looking at Coinbase more from the numbers. Will with the Onchain, and then Dylan kind of just going through their financials. Will,
the only thing I want to contribute
Dylan,
to this,
go.
And I'll let Will go after, and I'll keep it short, is that there's no way in hell Coinbase is worth 2 million Bitcoin or 1.8 or whatever the number is. And Square's trading around similar market cap, but I would say you're kind of dumb if you're long Coinbase and short Bitcoin. So yeah, I mean, I think they'll do well, and they're, hopefully they raise they sell some equity, company, like, and issue some more shares and buy Bitcoin if they, or issue debt with access to public markets. They're dumb if they don't, because I mean, that's what they've built on. They're riding on the back of Bitcoin, and all the other altcoins is because of that. You can take it, Will.
Sure. So I think just from my personal perspective, I think now that they're the only publicly traded exchange, I think you're going to start to see a lot of validity, as institutions are already going through Coinbase, but I think now that'll really be solidified as the main exchange for them to go through. So I think from an on-chain perspective, I'll probably see more of those whales coming in and more capital flowing into Coinbase itself. And then from a different perspective, I think Coinbase is an example of Michael Saylor had talked about kind of this layered adoption of Bitcoin. Another example of this would be like the debt that he had issued, right, for people that can't directly get exposure to spot Bitcoin. Some of these funds were able to buy in and get exposure that couldn't for regulatory restrictions. They bought into the convertible debt notes to get exposure that way. So I see this as another kind of almost layer of Bitcoin adoption, right? And it's a net positive for the space.
Do you guys need me to call on you, or are you gonna just jump in?
I want to talk. I like talking on a live stream. Hey guys, I want to know. I don't think that they're going to issue debt and buy Bitcoin. I think they pretty well indicated what their prerogative is, and that's shitcoining, and that means US dollar accumulation. So I don't see it happening. I will say over last weekend, David Bailey was telling some anecdotal stories, and he said that Brian Armstrong, OG Brian Armstrong, during the Big Fork Wars of 2017, stood up in a room of some really hostile assholes and told them to all fuck off when they told him to side with the dark side. So that was a pretty cool story and anecdote to hear. That being said, I mean, fuck Coinbase today. I can respect the old Brian, but he's not doing any favors for Bitcoin, and shame on them for not stacking. I don't think that they're going to do it. But to Will's point, I think that this gives validity. I think that Kraken's on the horizon. They will definitely ride the coattails to go public at some point. But I'd be curious, is Coinbase evil? I bought my first Bitcoin there. I don't think that the company is evil in itself. I just think that their unit of account is pretty fucking wrong.
Yeah,
Well,
Joe, I agree. I bought my first Bitcoin on Coinbase, and whenever I talk to anyone new, anyone my age, they always have Coinbase either downloaded on their phone, or that's the first exchange they go to. So I definitely have mixed feelings about it. I remember when David was telling us that story, I wanted to bring it up, but I completely forgot the details of it. So thank you for having a way better memory than me. But I can definitely
way
respect
deep in
that.
the whiskey bottle too, Nick.
Yeah, I know.
A little bit more props.
Yeah. But I definitely respect that. I don't respect the stuff they do, selling the government information and stuff. And I think that's just total BS, especially when they, had total revenue of 1.8 billion. They didn't need to do that. It's just completely ridiculous. But one thing I wanted to bring up is they had 6.1 million active users on a monthly number, and then it was 56 million. And if you think about it from a scarcity point of view, Bitcoin is so scarce, not even every single person on Coinbase can own a full coin. And I think that's really bullish. As this bull run heats up, everyone, all the normies and all the Bitcoiners as well. I don't use Coinbase, but I know people who do. They're on Coinbase trying to buy Bitcoin, and there's just not enough. And there's going to be a sack squeeze coming pretty soon.
Guys, I want to put this into perspective because I love the book The Sovereign Individual so much, and I think that they're very directionally correct. In The Sovereign Individual, they said that there's going to be about 100 million people that are rich enough to become sovereign individuals in the future. There's only 21 million Bitcoins. So even like, let's say they're half off, you can figure that one out.
So I would like to dig in a little bit more specifically on like this Coinbase stuff, because one thing that I'm thinking about too is like, I would venture to bet that Coinbase as an organization and as a company and how it's like what its growth trajectory looks like and its strategy has to look drastically different now that it's a public company. I mean, back when they were listing kind of questionable coins, like shit coins, not that they aren't all questionable, but like ones that were very clearly like not going to pass the Howey test, and they just stuck
What do you
them
mean
on there
back
anyway.
when?
Yeah,
They're still
well,
doing it. Let's
mean,
not
yeah,
give them
sure.
any slack here.
Yeah.
Sure. So will they continue to do it when they're publicly traded? I don't know. Like, there's so many different ways that Coinbase behaves once their stock becomes and therefore their governance becomes, tradable, that like I'm very curious to see whether they, hone in on very specific revenue streams and like try and crystallize what their governance structure is for the company, whether they just continue to expand the casino into like all sorts of, ridiculous assets that, who are questionable in terms of their value. Like there's a lot of different ways they could take it. And, one thing that I knee jerk reacted when Joe was talking about how, whether they'll be able to take out debt and buy Bitcoin. And I agreed, like, there's no way. But now I'm thinking, in a Bitcoin bear market, when they have access to way more debt than any other private company has, could you see Coinbase, in order to find new modes of like revenue, issue debt and buy Bitcoin and like do it that way, even buying it like through their platform? I don't know if they can like double dip revenue like that, but different ways that they can pad their revenue numbers and their stats in order to look appealing in terms of their quarterly earnings reports. I don't know. I feel like there's just all sorts of ways that this like actually kind of changes what Coinbase looks like as a company, and I haven't really thought it through probably as much as I need to. Leigh, what do you think?
I agree with what Nick had brought up about the fact that Coinbase was selling data when it didn't necessarily need to, considering its revenue. And okay, I'm gonna give a take. I actually really believe this take, and I would love to be wrong, but I don't think I am. I think that Coinbase will have the same impact on the world, or a comparable impact on the world, as Facebook did. Think about the way that Facebook impacted elections. It changed the way that businesses operate. It changed the way that students collaborate together. I mean, like Facebook changed the way that we do things. And I think that Coinbase has similar potential. We talk a lot about sovereign individuals and governments not being able to do this or that. It's pretty easy to access. When most of us bought our first Bitcoin on Coinbase, meaning Coinbase has all of our personal data, it is very easy to identify an individual to make an example out of. So a lot of the future of Bitcoin, in my opinion, relies on the goodwill of the people at Coinbase making ethical decisions in terms of how they go forward, especially now they're going to have the eyes of the world on them. They're going to have all this capital at play. I use Facebook. It's an amazing way for me to connect with people that aren't on other platforms, and for me to access information in groups that aren't available on other platforms. So I'm not against Facebook existing as an entity. I'm not against Coinbase existing as an entity. I am very grateful that it's so easy for people to get their first Bitcoin, but it's something for us to think about in terms of a company that has a massive amount of data, has a, I wouldn't say problematic, but I would say checkered, sometimes good, sometimes bad history in terms of how it treats its personal data and how it treats its customers, what kinds of things it lists, what kinds of information it gives them about the financial choices they're making. I think Coinbase will have a huge impact on the economy, and I'm very curious to see how that plays out.
Leigh, I agree that Coinbase is going to resemble a very huge historic company, but I don't think it's Facebook. I think it's AOL. I think Coinbase is the AOL of Bitcoin, and their take on Bitcoin is so skewed because of all of this noise and distraction of being a trading platform, that it's gonna be their downfall. And I mean, again, I that's just because I'm just so bullish on Bitcoin. And despite Coinbase and being in this position, I feel like they're just distracted. And they're doing the opposite of what Bitcoin Magazine is doing, is they're hiring normies. And I'm sorry, I understand that, you need professionals to do specific jobs, but they're not led by Bitcoiners. And the best companies in the space are led by Bitcoiners. I look at NYDIG, and they're working with the biggest institutions, just like Coinbase, and they're Bitcoiners, right? So it's possible. So I'm kind of bearish Coinbase because of that. I think they're AOL. So I do think that they're important. I think they're going to impact elections. They're going to onboard people into the internet of money, right? They're doing it right now. That's unquestioned. That's you can't question that. But I don't know.
I have to say one
I
thing.
think they're wrong.
I have to
I think they're
chime in.
wrong.
So
Yeah.
Let me chime in, Casey, real quick.
yeah.
I totally respect what you're saying, Lee, and CK. I think that was a good analogy. And yeah, they do have a honeypot of data, but also, like in America, we have a Bill of Rights, and let them come make an example is how I feel, because I don't know. I like my hair stands up when I think about like people knocking on doors, because knock on a couple doors and the people are not going to tolerate that. But they could try that. I don't think it would end well for the enforcers of that, the guys who are knocking on the doors. But they do have the data, and it's probably scary amount of data, to be honest with you. But hey, put your coins off Coinbase. That would be the advice. So anyway,
People definitely are.
Agree.
man, what does the outflow look like, Will? Just like retarded going off exchanges, man. It's crazy.
Tell
Yeah,
us
I
with
think
that, but I have a question after.
I was just gonna say, I think we're down a little over 560,000 in the last, I think 10 months. I might have that figure off by a little bit, but somewhere around there.
But here's the ultimate question: is where are those funds going? Because there's a very good chance that a large percentage of those funds are going straight into Coinbase custody and straight into Fidelity custody. So, okay, yeah, it's not trading. That's signaling long-term holds, but it's still 6102 to the U.S. government effectively.
Yeah, that's a great point. You can only track things to a certain extent. So yeah, I think a majority of it, people like to talk about, how bullish it is in the sense that people aren't selling, but yeah, it very well could still be under their control or custody, if you will.
I want to offer something optimistic, although extremely out of date. The last time that I talked to all the different hardware companies, it was during the pandemic, like the heat of it, I think maybe 6 or 8 months ago. But pretty much all of them had said that demand had at least doubled, if not tripled. So there are certainly people who are buying more hardware wallets. And there's a lot of different kinds of things you can do without a hardware wallet, right? Like you could use an old phone technically if you want to. But at least we do know that the demand for hardware wallets is up crazy, crazy, crazy. And it's possible that some of that stuff that's getting off the exchange is also going into personal wallets.
So maybe, I know we're going back to Will, but Will, we just talked to Raphael. Maybe you can tease a little bit about what he's saying, but I think the on-chain data does confirm what you're saying, Leigh.
Yeah, I don't have too much to add. But yeah, I think institutions, I think some of them, I think there's a mix. Some of them are saying, okay, I don't really know what I'm doing here, so I'm going to trust a third party. And then there's a fair portion of them that, we see like Tesla, who's running their own node. Some of the more technologically savvy ones are going to want to take custody of the coins themselves.
So
Yeah.
go ahead.
Or I was gonna say, just if I can comment to round back on Coinbase real quick, as far as like the actual like prolificness of Coinbase, to me at least, it seems like this. Coinbase is to Bitcoin as Facebook is to social media. And if you're a Zoomer, you understand like Facebook is kind of like a dying breed. It's like what old people use. So I think, Coinbase is prolific in the sense that it was like the first one to onboard a lot of people, but they can be replaced, certainly.
I think you're onto something there. I think it's not really maybe it's not necessarily the companies that are changing the world. Maybe it's not even that it's social media, or it's basically what it is the underlying technology. I mean, Bitcoin's what's changing the world. Coinbase just so happens to be one of the people offering access to it. There are other on-ramps, but I think the underlying technology is what's going to wind up changing the world. And even relating that back to Facebook, maybe Facebook's not exactly what changed the world, but the underlying technology of when the World Wide Web was launched, that's what changed the world, right? The proliferation of information changed the world. Now the proliferation of sound money is what's going to change the world again. So it's the underlying technology, and then I guess whatever companies take that and run with it and create the best platforms around it, they're the ones that are going to thrive. But I do like CK's take, on the AOL portion of it, because they do seem to have lost the plot a little bit, even though they were early movers.
So I would like to jump in just on that specific one, and I'm going to be the devil's advocate of the group. I see Coinbase as this. It's not like a Trojan horse. It's like the piñata that the community is going to offer up to the mainstream world. And so they've got to come with like the most mainstream, palatable, unoffensive, like very apologetic kind of version of what Bitcoin is and what this industry is bringing. Because think about all the aspects of like mainstream life that we don't have to deal with being a Bitcoin company that's not publicly traded, that we're not, like those guys, they were part of what, Silicon Valley startups, the Y Combinator, like they were Y Combinator, right? Like they were founded with the understanding that someday they're going to go public. And so they had to take this very unoffensive, middle of the road, like we are trying to not make a statement one way or the other so that we can be as on good terms with everyone as long as possible. And it's gotten to them to this point, right? Like they're the first big Bitcoin company. I know there's other ones, like the first big Bitcoin company that's publicly traded in America. And I see them as, I've said this a couple times internally about, really about the conference stuff, but just in general, it's like everyone's on their own Bitcoin journey and you got to start somewhere. And I feel like Coinbase has continued to be like a very comfortable place to start for people, where it's like, it looks kind of like a stock brokerage account. They're not going to tell you that Bitcoin's going to change the world. They're going to offer up like all these, like they're not going to give you a narrative that they, need to sell to you. It's like, if you want to use Bitcoin, you can buy on Coinbase. We're super trusted. And so, I want to just like defend them as much to say as like they have a role to play in Bitcoin's mainstream adoption. And like, I think they're playing that role, not perfectly, obviously, but as like a little bit better than we maybe give them credit for. And I'm ready.
Like AOL.
I'm ready to see like, once they're a mainstream company, I remember the hit piece that they got from Nathaniel Popper a couple months ago about, all sorts of issues that they had in terms of their hiring practices and stuff like that. And it's just like, that's going to come on a weekly basis for them now. I mean, like they're in the big leagues now. And so, they're going to take a lot of the brunt so that the rest of us can continue to build and continue to create, the products, the services, the understanding, the narratives, the memes, all of that kind of stuff. And we can like kind of run a little bit more freely than otherwise we could. So there's another take. I don't know if anyone agrees with me on that, but I'm just trying to be sympathetic to them a little bit.
I got to do it. I can bring it back to the AOL thing, but when you described that, it did sound so much like the walled garden approach that AOL did, where like you log in and you see, oh, you can pick these topics to explore today, right? Where they kind of just take their own framing of it, put it in front of you, but you don't really realize what's underneath all that is where all the actual interesting stuff lies, which would be digging into Bitcoin in this case, or the open internet in their case.
One thing I wanted to touch on is like I kind of I'm in the camp of like, yeah, I think Coinbase is going to be around a long time. I think they're way too big, way too powerful. They have so many users and just so much money behind them. But I'm also really bullish on a lot of the other exchanges. One exchange that so many people have on their phone, and I've onboarded so many people from, and they didn't even know it, was Cash App. They had no idea that Cash App, you could buy and sell Bitcoin on it. And I mean, it's so easy to use. Like I got my mom set up on a weekly auto recurring DCA, and she, I had to text her the instructions, but she now, takes custody of her coins every single week. And like it's super simple, super easy to do. Swan Bitcoin is also really good. You can set up auto, buys, and then it auto withdrawals once you hit a threshold to your hardware wallet. Like you don't even have to do anything. I think that some of these little features that these other companies do, it's going to take a long, long time. But I can definitely see a world where these other companies, eventually push out Coinbase at the #1 spot. But I think for right now, Coinbase has solidly cemented their spot at the #1 spot for the next like 1 or 2 bull runs.
Yes, I want to echo what Nick just said about Square and Cash App and slightly argue with Brand just a little bit, because I believe Square is also publicly traded, correct? So we consider Square to be a Bitcoin company. No, they offer a Bitcoin exchange of sorts, but they behave very differently towards their users, right? And when we talk about that Bitcoin didn't have a very political message, yes, it does. They, what was it, 2 years ago, 2018, they had this huge campaign, or maybe it was 2019. They had this huge campaign about that they were donating these altcoins to Venezuela. And they were talking about empowering Venezuelans. When you're talking about empowering Venezuelans by giving them cryptocurrency, you are literally talking about breaking their local laws. And I don't like their local laws, so I'm not against that as a concept, but it's a very political message. The political messages, however, have been relegated to foreign people. Those are the people that we're going to empower. Those are the people we'll have politics for. And when we're here at home with, Iranian Americans getting unbanked, sex workers being unbanked, then all of a sudden we have no politics. So I don't think that Square is much better in that regard. It's not like Square has come out with this like great crusade, defending Iranian Americans. But I do think that we have seen publicly traded Bitcoin companies that are now taking two very different approaches. And I will be very curious to see which one the market rewards in the end. Yeah, that's
just to throw this out there. Square and Cash App in particular is very, very well known in inner city communities because they are willing to take out the risk on, people that wouldn't have access to a checking account otherwise. And that's why Cash App has like the basic banking functionality. And honestly, if you think of their app as your only bank account, it's kind of fucking dope. It's a dope little app. Like I'm really impressed by them. And I agree with Nick that the first thing I ask people if they don't have, like a lot of people already have Coinbase. And honestly, if people ask me where should I stack and they're not stacking, I'm like, whatever app you already have, just use that one. But like usually it's like you got Coinbase? No, okay. You got Cash App? Awesome. Okay, let's go to Cash App. Let me show you how to do the auto buying. And what Coinbase and Cash App both do amazingly is that they have the auto buying. That is the most important feature. If you go to like even Robinhood, you can't really auto buy your stonks that easily. Like they don't make it easy, but auto buying Bitcoin, it's just killer fucking feature.
I feel like you go through these levels. Like you start off as a noob on Coinbase, and then you go to the Cash Apps, the Swans, the Rivers, and then eventually you hit the peak at Strike, and that's when you're getting your salary paid in Bitcoin, and that's how you're stacking sats.
Yeah, well, kind of to that point too, and I also I want to touch on what Leigh said, but when you buy Bitcoin for the first time, you're speculating. Like you've heard that it's going to go up in value, and like you've heard maybe that it has value for some reason, but for the most part, you don't get it, and you're speculating. Once you get to the point where you're DCAing, you are using it as a savings technology. And so like that's actually a kind of a flip in your mind in terms of, this isn't an investment anymore. This is a savings tool for me. And like, I have to use it in order to store my wealth. So I do think like it's definitely a layer down kind of the rabbit hole. Leigh, I just wanted to respond super quick. I agree that, Square is definitely a Bitcoin company now. I think when they first launched and like first got publicly traded, they weren't really a Bitcoin company. So it's like, you can make the same argument with like MicroStrategy now, right? Like technically they're a publicly traded Bitcoin company too. And some of these like Riot or Marathon or so. Yeah, there's definitely other publicly traded Bitcoin companies out there. I guess the distinction I'll make is like, a newly like launched, I guess it's not an IPO, but publicly listed or public listing of a Bitcoin company is the one that's going to draw all of the criticism. You're right too about like, apolitical in the US, very political elsewhere. And I think that you're right too on your point where it's like, it's very easy. You're not spending any political capital by saying that people, in Venezuela need help. Whereas in the US, you're dipping your toes into politics of things that people care about a lot when you start working on, some of the other disenfranchised people here. So I agree with everything you said.
By the way, every time I do this, guys, it means I'm agreeing with you. It's like jazz hands, like quietly applauding.
It's awesome.
Y'all, I want to pivot the conversation. I think Nick was the one who mentioned Strike and getting paid in Bitcoin. I really do think that the UX of accepting fiat and then getting Bitcoin in an account that you can withdraw from is gonna blow up in the next, like, let's just call it 2 or 3 years. But I want to talk about getting paid in Bitcoin. Rodolfo Novak of CoinKite, he created a subset of his Bitcoin Treasury's website about pays in Bitcoin. We're seeing a lot of companies announcing that they're paying in Bitcoin. Bitcoin Magazine pays contractors in Bitcoin, and we have a goal to pay full-time employees in Bitcoin, and we give out Bitcoin bonuses. I mean, getting paid in Bitcoin is an awesome perk about working with a Bitcoin company, and now it's a perk of working in some random newbie companies, or not newbie, but normie companies too. So, I mean, what do you guys think about getting paid in Bitcoin? Personally, I think the people will demand to get paid in Bitcoin. They're going to say, I will not work unless you pay me in Bitcoin. I don't want your cuck bucks. I want to go to Nick Ward.
Sure. I mean, what's nicer than having your money arrive in its highest form of potential, like right off the bat, instead of having to do the legwork? Like, what's better than that? If you're willing to, if you're one of the people that wants their salary and wants to get paid in Bitcoin, you're already all in on that savings technology standpoint. You're already in on, this is my long-term storage. It's the difference of getting your salary direct deposited into your savings account, or going to a check cashing place and getting paper money or putting it in your wallet, right? Right now, when we take dollars, we're essentially going check cashing. If you want to save it for your future, you take it directly in Bitcoin and you lock it up. It's straightforward.
Leigh.
I agree with that. Yeah, exactly. Jazz hands. I agree with that completely. I will say that when I've earned Bitcoin the few times, I spend it a lot less. Like, you think twice about needing to cash out into dollars, like, do I really need that thing? I mean, sometimes the answer is yes. Like sometimes the answer is like a medical bill. And like, then I want to definitely cash out and be healthy. But like the most times, like the Bitcoin is actually more valuable to me than the thing I would have spent my dollars on very frivolously. And I think earning in Bitcoin can be just good about developing good saving habits.
I like that, because here's my current situation. I accumulate wealth or I accumulate my paycheck in fiat, and then I save in Bitcoin, and then I spend that fiat, right? But if I went straight to Bitcoin, I would actually have to liquidate the Bitcoin in order to spend it easily. I don't think that's going to be a permanent state, but for now, that's the current state, and that's quite the friction point.
Yeah, and it also makes you think about who you want to work with, right? Like, so when I paid in Bitcoin for art, for example, I develop a much more direct relationship with that artist because I want to transact wallet to wallet, and I choose more selectively. Like, it's not just that I like, this one particular piece. I like where that artist is going. I really appreciate the work itself, and I'm valuing it so much that I'm willing to pay for it in Bitcoin. So it makes you think not only about like spending less, but spending on things in which you develop direct relationships with your producers, which is just healthy for the economy, right? Direct accountability.
It's like the opposite of this fiat, like conglomerate sludge. Someone jump in.
Yeah,
I
dude.
want to say, dude, I think that Bitcoin getting paid in it is so rad. I know as a company, we're going to be doing it by end of quarter. I think everyone on this call is going to get some portion paid in Bitcoin, and it's going to be so badass to just like participate in that and having, you know, the system set up. That being said, also, I think that these sports athletes, young Jack Mullers is such a baller, and he's like cornered this market. And I think that like the groundswell is growing for these athletes. They're like, yo, fuck that. Let me get some real money that is appreciating in value. So I'm like super bullish on the athlete generation because like athletes are young men and women, and like they're, you know, trending towards newer money. So I think that they could be so influential. My big thing is there's a lot of NFL players that have a couple have gotten the laser eyes, which is so fucking awesome. My question is like, you know, Russ is all out orange pill, you know, like uh when does the meme start, you know, taking over the brain beyond just the laser eyes? Because the meme's unstoppable. And I think that when the right, like when the groundswell happens of these athletes, you know, when the right number of guys start taking their salary in Bitcoin, and the laser eyes get to like this critical mass, everyone's going to fucking do it. And then like you got this influential class of people that normie America looks up to, that's just fucking like losing their shit. They're going to absolutely want to FOMO in and be like fucking LeBron.
Yeah, and it's not just NFL players. Like I saw and I wrote about it a little bit this week. Ryan Babel, he plays for Galatasaray in Turkey, but he's formerly of like Liverpool and Ajax and some of these big clubs in Europe, and he plays for the Netherlands national team. He has been buying Bitcoin. Go look up his Twitter and just type in Bitcoin. He's been tweeting about it. He's been talking about getting paid in Bitcoin and stuff. And he has been shilling Bitcoin to his teammates. And if you know anything about European football, they make really good money. So, you know, that's like the first thing I thought of was like, you know, just I can just see Ryan Babel and like, you know, the playing in the Champions League, like halftime, just has his phone, like, you know, using Strike to buy Bitcoin or something
Smash
like that.
by
Like,
during halftime.
yeah, he's got to buy the dip during halftime and stuff like that. Like, that's all I can think about.
I mean,
And
but like, why isn't I think that we'll make it whenever they're like participating, Nick. Like whenever they're shit posting, and they're posting like
That's like now.
well,
We've
like
made it.
whenever they're fucking posting like the stupid like Greg memes, they're like the porn star memes and like the really ridiculous stuff that is like really silly. I think that's when we made it, but we need like LeBron to adopt. That's when
Yeah, I think it's
Well,
interesting when
you
you start
know-
to see like a cultural shift to this, right? When you start to see more, you know, sports athletes, and also, you know, in the music industry, that has a lot of influence on the way people think. So if you start to see rappers rapping about how they have Bitcoin and they have a big old bag or something like that, you know, I think when it starts getting entrenched into the culture, I think that's going to be a big movement towards the paradigm shift towards Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I could actually
Yeah,
echo
well-
on that real quick. I have a buddy who I was just talking to last night who works for a pretty major record label, and he was talking about, hey, how much he knows his CEO would want to come to the Bitcoin 2021 conference because they want to pay their artists in Bitcoin. They see it as like a really big deal to be able to, you know, more closely pay out artists what their royalties and what they actually earn in terms of music. So just right there, you know, once you get into the art and the music industry, you know, then you're really tapping into the cultural phenomenon of it. And I think that's a big deal too. Actually, I'll bring up this point later in case anyone else has something else they want to add. But I do have another point to make on companies saying with Bitcoin broadly.
I'd like to add something on the sports players collecting salary in Bitcoin front. Darren Ravel does, a lot of people do this, but they keep track on, who are the highest paid players in the sports. It comes up every free agency period. Oh, so and so just got a new contract. They are now the highest paid player in X sport. Let one cycle go by, and they are no longer going to be the highest paid player in that sport. It's going to be some pleb on a crap team that wound up stacking half his salary in Satoshis, who is now the highest paid player in the league. And the number one player in the league is going to be like, well, who the hell is this guy? And what does he know that I don't? And then they're going to fire their financial officer.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
earlier
sorry,
this
I don't mean to
year,
interrupt.
earlier this year in January, some team in Spain, and like not the top tier, but like the second tier, they paid for a player and they paid fully in Bitcoin. Like the transaction was denominated in Bitcoin, and they held the Bitcoin. And that was not that big of a purchase. I think the player cost like less than $1 million. But over time, that little purchase is going to become the most expensive transfer in history.
Yeah, that's true. Now, I was gonna say that Russ is kind of already proving this, Nick, and not to say like Russ is an all-star tackle, and those are some of the highest paid players in the league, but he's gonna be number one soon strictly because of no other reason other than he's stacking half of his salary in Bitcoin automatically. And I think that there's a lot of players who are like getting USD denominated paychecks that are a lot higher, and they're gonna be like, the fuck, this guy's beating my ass with just stacking Bitcoin. So I think that's going to be a very difficult force. And Anthony Scaramucci said this on the Bitcoin Magazine podcast with Matt Odell, and he said with asset managers, even if they don't want to have anything to do with Bitcoin and they hate Bitcoin, it doesn't matter, because if they're managing a fund, they're going to be compared to some other fund that has Bitcoin on their balance sheet. So effectively what that means is that they're short Bitcoin in terms of their competition. And if their competition is crushing them because of Bitcoin, like that's going to become really, really apparent. And I think that's going to become apparent everywhere, even including businesses. And I know that's a topic that we're going to talk about later. I want to throw it to Casey. I know Casey's been trying to jump in for a minute here. Casey, take over, but also turn off your video because your internet sucks.
Yes, of course. Apologies for that, by the way. But yeah, I was just gonna say, the athletes are a huge story, but anyone with an agent contract essentially is gonna be wanting to get into Bitcoin, and it's not because like they want to they hate their agent or anything in particular, but there are so many, it's almost like taxes. There are layers of taxes that these people have to go through just to sell like their art or their work, or like in the case of athletes, like essentially their body. So yeah, anyone who has like a contract sort of deal like that with an agent and all that, they're going to be super ecstatic about Bitcoin. And there's like a variety of reasons for that. But I see Leigh like super agreeing.
Yeah, I really agree with you there. So I want to point out something that was occurring to me as you guys were talking about like the athletes and like their competitiveness on their rates and their different careers. Something that athletes have in common with the population that I'm more familiar with, which is poor performers, is that this is a population that their earning potential is usually in the beginning of their career. Right. And so for these kinds of people, it's really, really important that they be earning in a high value asset that is not going to be suffering from inflation later in their lives. So we see it a lot. You were mentioning also someone about music and artists. So performers in general, people that right now get the short end of the stick in terms of all of these middlemen that are between them and their fans, and also in between them and being able to manage their own finances. I think Bitcoin is revolutionary for those kinds of people. I know that like when I talk to like regular people, you know, mostly if I ask them what is Bitcoin, they'll be like, oh, it's a gambling thing, right? You know, or, oh, I've heard about that. Maybe it's associated with criminals. When I talk to sex workers, like, have you heard about Bitcoin? They're like, of course, let me tell you about what I just did to my node. And I'm like, how are you so far ahead of me in this? So definitely people who have high earning potential in the beginnings of their careers usually deal with a lot of handlers and are thinking about wanting to more have direct relationships with their audiences and long-term potential when it comes to earning potential and holding the wealth that they got earlier in their lives. I think that Bitcoin can be really attractive to these kinds of groups of people.
Yeah, isn't that interesting how like the time preference of the job that someone does plays into like the time preference of their monetary storage or whatever?
Historically, it's always been cash too because it's permissionless, but Bitcoin is just a 10x improvement, if not a 1000x. I'm sorry for even saying such a bearish thing. Nick Ward.
Yes. Oh, I started this,
Putting
but
you on
I
the
mean,
spot,
I'll
talk.
add one prediction is that Patrick Mahomes is going to fire his financial advisor when he gets out earned by a punt returner who stacks his salary and stats.
Let's
Agreed.
go.
Yes.
I like that. I also want to call out Nick for like trying to flex his European soccer knowledge on all of us. Some bullshit.
Yeah, we're not gonna know that.
Yeah, like he could have just made words up and no one would know a damn thing.
Well, you know a little bit, Joe.
I know enough to call your fucking bluff.
Well,
Okay,
I
wait,
wasn't
so-
lying. Like everything
Can
I
we
said
go
was
back
true.
real quick? Can we go back real quick? Because I did want to say something else about like the whole getting paid in Bitcoin thing. And that is, so like one devil's advocate, I'm going to be the devil's advocate of the show tonight, to getting paid in Bitcoin is that, you know, if your company is holding Bitcoin on its balance sheet and paying you with it, then they are losing that Bitcoin themselves. Whereas if the company is holding Bitcoin on the balance sheet and then they pay you in fiat, they can take out loans against their Bitcoin collateral, pay you in the fiat, and then you can go stack the sats yourself. And then as the Bitcoin appreciates, their their amount that they need to pay on the loan actually decreases, and they have more flexibility to take on more debt because the Bitcoin appreciated. So it's actually better for your company if they hold Bitcoin on their balance sheet. Technically, I think, unless someone has a better take than me, to take your salary in fiat, because then they can hold on to more Bitcoin themselves.
Nobody tell David, our CEO, that. It's definitely not a thing. It's best to pay people in Bitcoin.
Yeah, that made too much sense to be comfortable with.
I mean, that's the beautiful thing about Strike, and Jeff Booth has said this multiple times, but if there's friction with paying in Bitcoin, there is going to be a lot of innovation on the on ramps, the intersections between fiat and Bitcoin. And I mean, I think that's a fact. That's already what we've seen.
But it's like, even if you didn't want to, go advocate for your company, and you're like, yeah, screw my company, I'll take their Bitcoins anyway. Just in terms of Bitcoin, if you had if you had companies taking out loans against the Bitcoin in fiat, so they weren't selling, and then you took that fiat, gave it to your employees, and they bought Bitcoin with it, now you're actually increasing the buy pressure of Bitcoin. Whereas, on the flip side, you would be, maybe making the Bitcoin a little bit more illiquid, going to your employees, but ultimately they would only ever be kind of liquidating into cash as needed, until that, need goes away in the marketplace. So just another, thing to think about when we're talking about paying people in Bitcoin, for us Bitcoin companies anyway. For an NFL team or whatever, heck yeah, they should pay in Bitcoin, because then they have to buy the Bitcoin, hold it on their balance sheet, and then give it to them. But yeah, just wanted to throw that out there. Something to think about. Get the juices flowing, get those gears turning a little bit.
Someone
It's
take
not
the bait.
bullish. I was just gonna say that's not bullish enough. I don't like that.
Brand's a bear. That's a fact.
No, I do think that I think Strike is the answer to that, though. As someone said, I think being able to instantly on ramp from fiat to Bitcoin and send that straight over without having to like hold that on your balance sheet for a long period of time is the answer to that. But
So actually, I just want to jump in too and like think of it this way. Like the way that the governments around the globe are posturing is that they're going to take on any stress that their fiat puts on them, and they're going to address it straight on, right? So I mean, effectively what that means is that like because of Bitcoin, like every single fucking hole in the system is going to start getting exploited like without any sort of remorse. Without any remorse, just like every single like subsidy in every government is exploited, right? Bitcoin is going to turn that up times 1,000. Like, imagine how hard it's going to be to just be a bureaucrat trying to deal with this shit. Bitcoin fixes this by breaking this. That's all I have to say.
All your mental models are destroyed.
God, that meme, it never stops. I love that.
Michael Saylor, man.
Michael Saylor, but Hedgeye too. I'm glad that he sold his Bitcoins. And then after that, after capitulating and buying both Bitcoin and MicroStrategy, I hope he didn't actually do it. I hope he was
The quads
flipping.
keep changing, so he always brags about when he's like, oh, quad 2 called this, and like the pump from 48 to 53 or something. You're like, dude, you're lost. Like, why are people paying you?
I love that video though. Just so entertaining. All right, should we talk about mining? That's our next topic. Do you guys want to like move on? Yeah? Okay, let's do it. I mean, right now miners are making all-time high profits. It pays to be a miner. Public companies like Riot and Marathon are pumping. They're some of the best performing stocks in an insane bull market. And then on top of that, you know, companies like Bitmain, they're getting orders all the way out until the end of 2022. So like all the ASICs are being accounted for already. It's pretty insane. Like I just can't imagine like another industry that's more bullish than mining. Who here is a mining guru? Who wants to throw their hat at this?
It can't be Nick. He can't mine.
Not Nick.
So I've been thinking about this actually quite a bit. I agree. Mining looks like it's a super bullish industry right now. And if you wanted to take a really large view kind of at what the trend has been, you know, originally it was mine with what you got, you know, your computer, maybe you get a GPU kind of thing. And then ASICs came about, and, you know, they caught up with the, you know, cutting edge technology. Now ASICs lead the way in terms of chip manufacturing and, you know, wafer size and all that kind of stuff. And it is like, you know, we've already progressed to where no one can outcompete, you know, chip fabs in the mining space in order to come up with the newest, coolest thing. The next thing, like, you know, we see the dislocation in the market from COVID, where it disrupted the chip manufacturing process. And now you're seeing these delayed shipments of miners to, or of mining rigs to miners. That's a huge deal. Like, first and foremost, it's a really big deal, because if you have effectively 2 more weeks of, you know, old mining money making, you know, 87% profit margin on what they're mining right now, you'll see that equal out to like 2 weeks delayed of them selling at the top of the market. And 2 weeks in the top of the market is a potential like 5x. I mean, it's a crazy, like, we're talking about the blowout phase here. So it has a lot of impact in terms of, you know, where this market could go just from this kind of backlog. But the crazy thing is that as Bitcoin continues to grow, this sort of thing is going to become more and more common. Mining is going to go from, and chip manufacture is going to go from, you know, being a portion of all chip manufacturing, you know, output, to literally new chip fabs are being created specifically solely to produce new miners, and new sources of energy are going to come online specifically to be able to service Bitcoin mining. And then later that becomes a grid load management problem. And like, you know, you can create new pockets of civilization because you have energy production in those areas. So, you know, the long-term view on this is actually incredibly bullish, not only for Bitcoin, but for the world, because you now have like a new kind of incentive model for growth and for, you know, distribution of population and just broad like success of humanity. So, you know, I think it's a really interesting thing and like a huge deal. I love talking about it.
Just
And
on
high-speed
miners,
internet.
just on miners, just to offer like a different perspective, you know, we're really starting to see miners not selling, which I think is now due to their ability to finance without having to sell the Bitcoins onto the market, which you know, when you look at the previous cycles, they were consistently selling throughout the entire time, right? And now you're seeing miners, especially in the last week, have really just completely stopped selling. They sold right after all-time highs, but now they actually, there's a chart and it shows the miners' net position of if they're selling or accumulating, and it just in the last week flipped green, which means that they're now actually not only not selling their coins, but they're actually buying them, which I think is super bullish.
Can you like dumb this down for me? Can you dumb down like
How many beers are
why?
Too much for Joe.
Yeah, Joe's twice your age, bro. You need to make it a lot more simple.
Well, like I just have a trouble with like I know that they were selling their balls off during the bear market, and what dynamic has changed to where now they can finance and not sell their Bitcoin? Can you just like
Can I hop in?
make it
Can I hop in
easy?
here?
No.
Yeah, go ahead, Dylan.
Yeah.
I think you
Yeah.
got a lot to say.
I think there's a couple different factors going on. One big like variable is that is like credit financing is so available that these like especially now that they're publicly traded, or like, you know, just in bigger pools of capital, they can finance their operations at really low rates. That's one factor, but I think that's actually like the less important factor. The other one is that since the last 6 months, we're up 500%, and at the halving it was 8K, and so having happened, all of these weak miners basically had to shut off their machines. There's a couple big difficulty adjustments, but basically everyone after that's just in the money. Like they have margin, and so they can, you know, stack, and they'll sell off whatever they need to cover expenses. Well, since then, price is 5x, but hash rate, which it's followed and it's at all-time highs, but it's nowhere near 5x. So you have all these miners that are
There's
just
a massive
so,
constraint on new equipment.
yeah, and they're ordered back. Like Riot is like they're scheduled for delivery till October 2022. You have all of these backlogged mining orders, and price is ripped, and it's at 60K now, and it'll be at 100K in a couple months. Who knows, maybe. And the hash rate still hasn't followed. So all of these miners are making so much coin, and fees have risen. So like they rarely have to sell. As the bull market heats up and as more and more hash comes online, eventually like the capitulation part of the bear market is when hash keeps ramping up, and miners' profit margins get cut to near nothing, and they start having to puke up coins. And that's when we saw kind of like the 6K to 3K capitulation in 2018 was when there was actually a bunch of downward difficulty adjustments because so many miners came online.
Yeah, to add one more thing, the other kind of new paradigm with all of this is what I was just talking about in terms of companies paying in Bitcoin. It's the fact that these companies now can collateralize their Bitcoin and take out loans against them, and then fund. Like you don't even have to sell the Bitcoin necessarily to cover all their expenses. When they see that the market's going to go on a tear like it is this year, you know, these miners are smart people. They know what this market cycle looks like. They're going to collateralize it. They're going to pay, you know, their operations in the dollars that they get from the loan, and then they're going to hold on to the Bitcoin, let it appreciate, and then pay it back at a you know, at a much lower premium. So that's the other, like these financial tools that the miners have access to. It's a really big deal.
Yeah, and I think that was kind of what Dylan was getting at there. It's like, you know, now that the price has gone up so far, the amount that they can get from collateralizing that Bitcoin is way more, right? While at the same time they don't have to buy as much equipment to capture as much hash rate. And then, you know, as well, like in previous cycles, we didn't have these lending and borrowing markets, not nearly to the maturation that they are in this cycle. So I think that's a huge difference that's existing this time around.
I can add something. I mean, as far as like the public mining companies go, they do have like incredible access to these capital markets, and great ways for them to raise money. However, I think there's a lot of murkiness going on there, where nobody has any idea what's going on behind the curtain, really. And there's a lot of, I don't know if there's a lot of it, but there's definitely instances of these publicly traded companies, and what basically comes down to as hash rate rehypothecation. So if they don't directly own the machines and get 100% of the revenue that's coming out of these mining machines, and they claim to have these miners, they might be sharing the revenue. They might be sharing the coin that they're earning with those, with several other people that have contracts with, whatever co-location services they're using. I have a friend that was reaching out to me who does PR, and there was a company, Bit Digital, which is a mining company, a public company, who had a lawsuit come at them basically. And what it came down to was, on their site, they publicly list that they have X amount of miners, but all of those miners are with co-location services, right? They don't own the facilities, they don't own the miners, they have contracts for them. So they can say they have X amount of miners, but that doesn't mean they have 100% of the revenue coming out of those miners. And I think from a regulatory standpoint, these publicly traded companies that are rehypothecating their hash power, I think there's going to be, I don't know what's going to happen, but it's really murky right now, and I don't think anybody is paying close attention to that. And because of that, their valuations are ridiculous.
The valuations are absolutely ridiculous, but at the same time, like, what valuations aren't, right? We're living in fiat clown world. I'm sorry. Like the fact that these companies are scratching the surface of Bitcoin in any way is just a massive buy signal in all the fiat clown noise.
Yeah, I think people forget, like, you'll hear someone say, I mean, it's funny when people call Bitcoin a bubble, or GME's a bubble, or the stock index bubble, or look at the corporate bond bubble. And it's like, no, this is not like an isolated thing. Like the it's an everything bubble. It's a sovereign debt bubble, because real yields on sovereign debt, which the entire global economy is basically constructed upon, is those rates, those credit markets. The real yields in the sovereign debt market, as via CPI, which is kind of a fraud metric, is still negative. So CPI inflation's 2%, the yields are still negative, and you're locking these contracts in for 10 years. It's just they're playing hot potato and saying, okay, well, the Fed will buy it higher. So when real yields are, and say CPI is wrong, and say it's 5% or 6% or 10%, like probably it is, or it is for some people, some entities. Like, what are the real yields on that? Negative 8%. So every discount rate, every asset is based on that. So it's not a, there's not one bubble here. It's an everything bubble, and when it pops, it'll pop into a sound money standard.
Yep, everything's a bubble. That's because the central bank is a giant helium tank, right? Basically.
There's that old saying, when everything's a bubble, the currency is a bubble.
So something that hasn't been brought up was, I don't know. I saw some headlines about the next big influx of money printer money to the U.S. economy, and some's going to be allocated to tech. But how long until the federal government allocates some subsidy funds towards a foundry? I think that's pretty rad to think about. Like, let's get a chip manufacturer on U.S. soil. I think that would be critical to our sovereign future. Also, as another topic that I'm like hyper excited about is the idea, the idea of on-grid mining or off-grid mining. In the US, we have so many sources of energy that are off-grid. We have natural gas all over the damn place, and even up in throughout Texas, and I'm here in Arkansas, and there's tons of natural gas here, and up into Kentucky, yada yada. But the idea of the future of mining being more decentralized with smaller producers, or the idea of being on grid. And I think the more optimistic take is the decentralized approach, it being, a bunch of pods all over the damn place. I'd be curious if anyone had any thoughts on, maybe not what they hope, but what they think will happen. I hope and think that is the way, but I'd be curious if anyone has any alternative opinions on that.
I'll say that I think certainly energy is much more decentralized than we think of it right now. simply because we've been operating on some sort of like standard or wavelength where energy needs to be transported to a use case nearby, like a city or some sort of civilization. So because we haven't thought of it like this before, I do think we're going to come up with new ways and find new areas that we find energy in. And so I think we haven't even really discovered the complete scope of decentralization that's possible for energy usage and energy containment in Bitcoin. And I think that will take a long time.
So I have a question for the squad here. How long until it is the common perception that Bitcoin is good for the environment? How long is it going to take until that happens?
I don't know if that will ever happen. But there are some things that can be done that are good for the environment. Joe was mentioning natural gas and gas flares, which already people are using. And I think it was a few weeks ago, I was talking to Adam Back, who was talking about exploring solar powered mining, especially in isolated locations that don't necessarily have connections to the general power grid. And that it being more, especially because you guys were talking about how ASICs are so limited in supply and the hardware it's hard to get, that it becomes more profitable to retire older mining machines to energy sources that are like wind or solar or things that are just like kind of ongoing. You're not relying on that for your general income, but like you either can throw this piece of machinery away, it was very expensive to get, or you can set it up in a way that it will slowly mine over time. I think there is potential to do stuff like that, but I don't know if that will change the popular perception of Bitcoin, because we just got so many headlines saying that it's bad for the environment, which is, in my opinion, not necessarily accurate when you're comparing apples to apples, but that's the public perception.
But there's so many practitioners that will have to vouch the opposite, right? At what point does it's just the obvious truth, like, hey, Uber is bad for your rides. Uber's bad for your rides, Leigh.
I mean, we still have people going to champion socialism today, so I don't think it ever fully goes away, really.
And I'll just say, bad for the environment is super subjective in the sense that, if you ask some people, eating steak is bad for the environment. So the actual concept of what is bad for the environment, super subjective, and people's definition of climate change and all that kind of stuff really plays into what they think is acceptable as far as energy usage and what we allocate our resources to.
I think this is actually an area where government, not interference, but policy has a huge impact. You don't hear anyone in China complaining about, Bitcoin being bad for the environment, because they have access to all this hydropower that's subsidized by the government, right? And it's not like, China had to print more money in order to give them the subsidy. They just gave them access to these plants and these resources. In Iran, you have a government policy, which is wanting to develop a local Bitcoin mining industry. So you don't hear anyone there. I mean, you do hear reports of people from here saying incorrectly that it's bad for the environment there. But if you talk to Iranians, it's not really necessarily their opinion. So when we have a US government that is supportive of using natural resources to participate in this industry, and frankly, if we want to protect not the hegemony, but any kind of dominance whatsoever in a global economy, then supporting a robust mining industry is very important in terms of government policy. When you see that government policy, then you'll see public opinion shift to match it, I think.
I think they're going to push the mining narrative that it's bad for the environment so hard during this bull run. I know Pierre Richard was talking about it, and he was talking about how they're going to push POS over POW, and they're really going to have this coordinated assault on Bitcoin. And that's just the next hurdle for it to overcome. My goal is I really want to be at the point where I'm Nick Carter status, and I get a mug saying I'm torching the earth or whatever it said, boiling the oceans. That's my goal. I want to be on that level at one point.
Their complaint about it being bad for the environment is actually a complaint about capitalism, because Bitcoin doesn't care if you power it with wind power, or if you power it with gas flares, or if you power it with electricity. Bitcoin will accept all these power forms. The fact is that in certain jurisdictions, it's cheaper to use coal, for example. So like their complaint is actually about government policy regarding local resources. It's not actually about Bitcoin itself. Bitcoin can be run in all kinds of ways.
Totally.
Unfortunately,
Leigh, I want to echo that and build on it a little bit too. Bitcoin's eventually like if you look at the trajectory of it, I was doing this math like a couple of weeks ago, and in 10 years, Bitcoin will be averaging, if it grows the same way it did the past 10 years, it will be averaging $2.5 trillion per year spent on energy producing new Bitcoins. I mean, that is like a 5 to 50x, depending on what you're looking at, like in terms of how much we're spending on energy right now. So it's going to necessitate new energy sources. It's going to necessitate us to increase energy production from what we have right now. And the thing is like, if you just look at, where is the most efficient and most effective in order to increase energy production capacity, it's not in oil and natural gas. Maybe it is in the short term. Maybe it is, because you can get to the next oil well, or you can increase the amount of oil production from a certain well, by just turning a valve. But ultimately, it's way easier to be able to install, every single basically renewable energy source is passive energy. I don't remember who said this, but earlier someone mentioned this. It's like, solar, wind, geothermal, nuclear, all of these are passive. Once they set up, humans don't have to be doing anything in order to extract energy from it. It just naturally happens. So those are naturally going to be cheaper than oil, natural gas, these other things, when we push, energy production further than it is right now. So I'm actually like, I think this is super bullish for the environment for a lot of reasons. And I don't know if, obviously narrative is lagging in all sorts of things when it comes to Bitcoin. So like we're still on Bitcoin being used by terrorists and drug lords, right? But like eventually people are going to have to understand, like wake up to the fact that like we're not going to be able to grow as a society if we don't have something incentivizing growth of sustainable energy production. And like that's what Bitcoin does. It's a beautiful thing. Sorry for interrupting, Nick. Go ahead.
That's okay. I mean, I was just going to say, to answer CK's question in one word, I would say never. I mean, while the internet's been amazing for
fucking bears, you guys are bears.
Listen
God,
to my
and
explanation.
pessimists.
While the internet's been amazing for sharing information worldwide, I think it's been equally horrendous for a nuanced discussion. At least it's turned into that, where there's no nuanced discussion whatsoever. And whenever this topic's brought up, there's never any comparisons. Like, is Bitcoin bad for the environment? And the follow-up question needs to be, as compared to what, right? As compared to what? The CT letter, right? They give some statistics showing gold mining consumes 3 times more energy than Bitcoin does right now. And Bitcoin is a 10x on gold's capabilities. So it's like, when you lose the ability to have a nuanced discussion around these topics, you're never going to break through unless people are willing to do the work. And unfortunately, they're not.
I want to
here's the thing. Something. I'm sorry. Let me say something and then back to Joe. Here's the thing, Nick, is that your assumption is based on people not willing to do the work today. But the reality is that in the future, the people that are the most standoffish on Bitcoin are going to be the most toxic about how great Bitcoin is in the future, because they're fucking sheeple. Do you think that they're going to lead the charge against Bitcoin when it's fucking common sense? Like, I just don't believe that at all. So like, I don't know. I think that the same sheeple that are like fearing change are going to be the same sheeple that are going to like protect Bitcoin to the death in the future. And we're gonna be like, oh man, you sheeple, I'm glad we have you to pump our bags. All right. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Joe.
It's okay. I mean, we just started talking at the same time and we're friends, so it's okay. But what I was going to say is that, I mean, the haters will have the least power. And that's what I really love about Bitcoin, is that the socialist and collectivist are going to be the last to adopt and fuck
Darwinism.
Yeah, I mean, like, this is a really great thing, and some of them may adopt and, like, take the orange pill and adopt the meme and signal that, and that'll be great. But I mean, they have no choice. Bitcoin will win. But also, Nick, to your statement that you're making, I feel like the bell-shaped curve of NGU, I'm on the left side of the curve, and I feel like the response is like number go up and like fuck you. Like that's what happens. Number goes up and like that drives the behavior. And like there might be some right bell curve young bros on this call. I'm on the left side. But I feel like
Wait,
that's how the market.
what you're saying right now is brilliant because people,
You sure you're on the
especially
left
in
side?
bull markets, want to buy Bitcoin and they're looking for the reason why. And right now, like the mainstream is going to give them all of the freaking reasons why they shouldn't buy Bitcoin. And if you can just refute some of those reasons to them in a reasoned conversation, they'll jump on. Like everyone wants to get rich. Everyone wants to be part of NGU. And so like, especially right now is the time where it's great to be combating this FUD of like, energy issues and global warming caused by Bitcoin, all that kind of stuff. Like, everyone wants to hear that that's wrong so that they can like, finally jump into this thing. And the only people who aren't are the ones who like have staked their reputation against it now. And, those are the folks who are going to ultimately be kind of the laggards. But the people who are just like sitting around and listening to this play out, they want to be corrected and proven wrong so they can jump in.
It just like
say,
they number go up. Okay. And like these people that have this narrative, you can't, you can't ration with them. You've just got to like give it back to them, and they will bend the knee to Bitcoin. I mean, you can't compromise with fucking idiots. That's all I'm gonna say. And like memes will win.
You toxic bastard.
All I'm saying is like memes control the
I was just
narrative,
gonna compliment
and
you.
we have the best narrative. Like number go up. The market does not give a fuck what you say about your oceans. The market doesn't care about your choice of energy consumption. The market does not give a fuck
Wow, I'm
about
shocked.
nuclear power. Like it doesn't care about anything. All it cares about is number go up, and people are going to invest where number go up because markets
Nick,
are moral. Capitalism is moral. Bitcoin is moral. Fuck the state and fuck anyone who tells you otherwise.
I think Joe's going to beat you to the mug, dude. Sorry.
Dude, I was literally just going to say Joe is so humble that he doesn't realize he's on the right side of the bell curve, but I take it all back.
Yo, Nick Ward, and there's too many Nicks now, but Nick Ward, we should get Joe's face as an ocean boiler on the mug. That'd be great. Guys, so this stream is supposed to end in 3 minutes. It doesn't have to, but I'm curious if you guys have dinner plans, like what's going on. I'm just trying to be the clock monitor here. Like, how are we feeling? Should we just go to last word? Should we rip on another topic? What's the energy like?
I haven't eaten yet, so I'm probably hop off. But I mean, if you guys want to keep it going, that's all good.
I also would like to eat soon. However, I would love to hear. I'm like very excited to offend Joe as like a parting word, and so I'm wondering if anyone else has parting words because I don't want to like drop my bomb if anyone has actually something smart to say.
Everyone gets a chance to have a parting word. Everyone gets a chance to have a parting word. All right, so how about this? I think it is time for last word. I have dinner upon me as well. So to the listeners out there, we're going to do these Bitcoin Magazine team streams more often. If you want to meet the team in person, go to Bitcoin 2021 b.tc/conference. Whatever it takes to get comfortable to be at the most epic Bitcoin gathering in history in the year that maybe Bitcoin breaks, everything. I would highly suggest go buy your tickets, go pay in Bitcoin and save $50. Use promo code Satoshi, regardless of how you're paying, to save 10%. And come meet these amazing folks at the Bitcoin Magazine team. If you want a job at Bitcoin Magazine, like I might start saying you got to meet me in person in order to apply. Like that's how much demand I'm getting, and meeting Bitcoiners in person, it's the way to do it. So I'm gonna stop shilling, and I am gonna give it to Dylan because he's hungry AF and he's earned it. He's been working a long day. What's your last word, my dude?
It was awesome to get on here and rip with you guys. For everyone that I haven't met yet, it was fun to chat. Leigh, Nick, and we actually talked before, but Will. So yeah, it was it's exciting times, and I guess I'll hand it off to Nick, or actually Joe. I want to hear from Joe.
We popcorn it
last.
up in
I'm
here.
going last. Go to Nick.
All right. Nick Hoffman, the Nick can't mine. What's your last word?
If anyone here on the panel, I know Joe is, but if anyone in the audience is going to be in Austin, Texas this weekend for Guns and Bitcoin, I'm going to be there. Let's meet up and let's shoot some dope shit. I'm excited for that. And yeah, don't really have anything too much to say. Just stack sats, don't sell Bitcoin, because if you sell, you're selling straight to institutions. So keep the Bitcoin in the pleb army.
Who's next?
Nick Ward.
Nick to Nick.
What's up, guys? I am the Nick that can mine, although I'm pretty terrible at it. We needed someone on the team that could take care of it, so that's what I'm here for. It's been a pleasure chatting with all you guys. Super humbled to join the team. And I look forward to more of these conversations in person. So get your conference tickets, and I'll see you guys there for the combos.
Promo code Satoshi. Bran, how's the dog doing?
I abandoned her, but I'll be back soon. David, if you're watching, don't worry. She's in the crate. Final word is everyone's talking about the conference. I'll give you guys some news. I just added them to the website earlier today. We got old Tim Draper confirmed as a speaker. He'll be there. Famously bought the Silk Road Bitcoins from the government, 30,000 Bitcoins. That's now worth, I just did the math, $1.8 billion that he.
That's more than Tesla's stash.
Oh yeah. So Timmy's doing good, and he'll be speaking at the conference. We got a dope lineup. I've got even some cooler, crazier speakers in the wings that I just haven't told you guys about. So it's going to be amazing, and can't wait to see you there. Other than that, I agree with what Nick, who cannot mine, said, and that is that if you're selling at this point, you're selling to institutions. You had a decade to front run them, and why would you be weak now and give them those precious sats? So hold on to them and get ready, because it's about to get insane. Popcorn, Will.
Hey guys, it was nice meeting all of you. Hopefully this is the first of many of these to come for me, and I'm looking forward to meeting you guys in person in June. So I'm excited as well to get started here full time now that I put in my 2 weeks. So let's get it.
Let's go.
Let's get it. All right. Casey, jump in here. Yeah, turn off your video.
Yo.
Get that crystal clear audio.
Yeah, I know, man. Something about the internet is just so trash today, but thanks for having me on again. Always love being on the happy hour, and make sure to read Bitcoin Magazine because we put out the best content in the world, and get your conference tickets for sure. And I think I should pass it over to Leigh.
Yeah, this is really, really fun. I want to say something really quick to offend Joe before we sign off, and that's because I don't think he knew this about me. Actually, I'm a dual citizen of Israel and the US, and in Israel, there are multiple socialist parties, one of which was the party that I voted for, so I am literally a socialist, and I still like Bitcoin, and I think it's cool. I definitely wouldn't support something like what China is doing. I feel like it's a little bit stricter than the Israel model that's hybrid and kind of capitalist too at the same time. But just throwing it out there that I think someone can be socialist or someone can be capitalist, and both can like Bitcoin. And I'm really excited to debate more issues with you in future Hangouts.
Leigh, you dirty capitalist hoarding all the Bitcoin.
It's true. I've become such a capitalist.
Y'all, can I just throw it out there that like what office environment administers such a, colorful conversation about so many facets about the world? I like Bitcoiners are just so intellectually stimulated at all times. It's like is it next level existence? I don't know. I don't wanna, pat ourselves on the shoulder too much, but I truly believe that. So if you
It
don't,
is.
you should try some Bitcoin. Joe, close us out, my friend. Close
All
us
right,
out. Promo code Satoshi, b.tc/conference.
Yeah, like let's go to the conference and have fun. And to close this out real quick, Leigh, I love you, and we don't have to agree, even though you're a dirty collectivist, and that's fine. But what I was going to say is go to thestatehatesyou.com and check it out, and read some words that are on that website. So anyway, besides that, everyone, thank you for joining. We got a fucking legit squad here at Bitcoin Magazine. I think that a lot of very cool things are going to be coming out of the squad that's on this chat right now. Super optimistic and bullish. And with that being said, Casey, thank you for joining. CK, Will, Nick, Leigh, Nick, Dylan, my boy, young Tommy in the studio behind the scenes. Hope you drink some hot tea, bro. And thanks for joining, guys. Fun.